Coming to you from the Spit Studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. This is the Spit Sports Show. When you think July is the dog days of summer, you don't really appreciate just how down August is. Because in July, you at least have like some major golf tournaments, Wimbledon. You have like little individual sports, and you're kind of wrapping up with the NBA free agency. So, when it comes to August, literally all we have to talk about is NFL training camps, which, wouldn't you know it, I really enjoy talking about. And the story of training camp so far, anyways, has been the Cleveland Browns' just comical quarterback room. I think they have 6 quarterbacks signed now. It looks like Shador is gonna get their first preseason start. My only take on that is if there has ever been a preseason game flexed before, this should be the one. I don't know if there's any precedent for it. I don't know if it's possible. I obviously have no clue what the networks and how they operate these preseason games, but I think the Cleveland Browns' preseason should be national TV because none of their regular season games are going to be national TV. And I am very interested to see how Shador finally plays without us just really getting his training camp numbers, which sorely lack context and which drill they're into, blah, blah, blah. But that's not what the topic of today is. The topic is about the other team that's been the most talked about throughout really the whole offseason, but training camp specifically, and not for the best reasons. And that's the NFC North Chicago Bears, who it seems have been media darlings for the past 2, 3 years. Prognosticators picking them to go to the Super Bowl last year, the year before. They were a very, very popular sleeper pick. And now, with Ben Johnson coming into the organization, should be somewhat of a culture shift there, which was clearly a big issue for them last year. A lot of Bears fans and national media are very optimistic about the Bears' chances, but it hasn't gotten off to the smoothest of starts whatsoever. And you don't have to take my word for that. Their head coach, Ben Johnson, said, and I quote, the offense is sloppier than I expected it to be at this point. And videos are coming out of Caleb Williams missing footballs, throwing them into the net and missing. And he missed the first three, and then on the last one, he missed the entire net. For context, the net is like bigger than the poster behind me. Like I and it was from 6 feet away. I'm very confident that a Pee-wee quarterback could have at least hit the net, maybe not like put it in the little holes, but hit the giant. Anyways, some bad looks have been coming out of Bears camp recently. And the thing that's so concerning about it for me personally, and obviously I'm no Bears fan, but concern for the Bears' chances, I actually think the offense and how it's coordinated and the rhythm of it, I actually think that's the least of their worries this year. All of these concerns about their offense being sloppy and Caleb not being in rhythm, I know Ben Johnson can coordinate an offense. I've seen it for the past 3 years. He has coordinated the best offense in football, and that is by pretty much every statistic. I'm very aware that he's a great play caller, play designer. I know that when it comes to offensive schematics, that's important, the schematics of it, he is top tier. He's an unbelievable coordinator. I do not know if he can actually lead a football team. Now, listen, I don't know Ben Johnson. I've never had a conversation with Ben Johnson, but I have watched him not from afar, but from close as he was the coordinator of my favorite team for the past 3 years. I've seen every single one of his press conferences. I watch a lot of his interviews. I'm very up to date. I think a lot more than a typical fan would be on what kind of personality this guy has and what kind of makes him tick. And obviously, very, very smart guy. No doubt about it. He, like I said, schematically and play design, there aren't many people who I've seen in front of a microphone discuss and discern football plays better than he can. Obviously, he's very bright with X's and O's, but he has no real presence about him. He just kind of looks like a guy that you would see walking around at the grocery store and not take a second glance. And is that everything for a head coach? No. But with head coaches in the past, like you could feel, I'm sure, obviously I don't know this, but I'm sure you could feel when Bill Belichick walks into a room. Andy Reid's obviously a huge physical presence. And back in his day, he was actually like huge. Now he's obviously a bit more pudgy, but big man. Mike Vrabel, big dude. Dan Campbell, big dude. There's obviously some people. The best example would be Kyle Shanahan for the kind of archetype that Ben Johnson can go off of. But even Sean McVay, like I would say he definitely has some physical presence about him. He's, big chest but the reason why I bring that up is some of the quotes and reports that have been coming out of camp. They remind me of one of the biggest disasters of a head coach in NFL history. And I'm not saying Ben Johnson is going to be that. I think he is much smarter and straight up a better person and football coach than the guy I'm about to mention. But where there's smoke, there's fire. And DJ Moore coming out and saying this quote, you get one chance. If you're a double offender, you might not get back in on that play or for the rest of camp. It seems like he's changing the culture quick. So you might hear that quote and be like, that's exactly what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to come in, put his foot down, put a tight rope around this culture that obviously wasn't good enough last year and really take a stranglehold on it. But the issue with it is he's reportedly just been constantly intense, constantly with his foot on the gas without a lot of leeway. And the reason why that's an issue is because he has learned his leadership, I think, and makes logical sense from Dan Campbell, who is, in my opinion, on the very short list of the best leaders of men in the NFL currently for head coaches. But we've seen that style work for him. Very intense, very player focused, very competitive, combative training camps and practices. But he also kind of has that balance of his players freaking love him and they would run through a wall for the guy. So Ben Johnson comes up in the Lions system learning about that style and that leadership style that's clearly been demonstrably effective for Dan Campbell because that's who Dan Campbell is. He is authentically himself. And being authentically himself makes him the best leader of men in the NFL. Is the intense, culture changing, foot on your neck, tighten up the offense kind of guy, is that who Ben Johnson authentically is? I don't know the answer to that. Is Ben Johnson a leader of men? These are the alphas of alphas, guys. The NFL is the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. If you're even thinking about cracking a 53-man roster, you are just a physical specimen and you've obviously worked your entire life to get to that point. And being in front of all of those men and telling them to follow you, that takes a certain personality. And if there is one thing that we have seen over and over again throughout NFL, NHL, MLB, NBA history, if there is one thing that will ruin your coaching career sometimes before it even gets started, a lot of the times after it gets started, is being inauthentic, not being true to who you are, because players can see it. I'm sure a lot of people watching this show right now have played some sort of organized sports and have had a coach where you can tell, like, I know he's saying this stuff, but he's just kind of going through the motions. There's no real spark behind it. And again, I don't know if that's what Ben Johnson is, but it reminds me a bit of Matt Patricia coming into Detroit from New England, bringing the quote Patriot way, where his training camps were report. I don't want to say similar because I wasn't there, but very strict, regimented. I don't know if that's a word, but there's a strict way of doing things, and he'd ride around on his cart and bark orders, and because he was trying to change a losing culture, which they were, but all he did was make it worse because Matt Patricia is not Bill Belichick, and he tried to be Bill Belichick. He tried to bring the whole Patriot way and everything that they did to another spot when you're not the guy who created that. First of all, I think Tom Brady created the Patriot way. Second of all, if there's anyone else who did, it's obviously not Matt Patricia. So, why that reminds me of Ben Johnson is he's coming into Detroit, or not into Detroit, sorry, into Chicago, bringing this kind of Dan Campbell leadership style. And I don't know if that's who he is necessarily. I don't think it's who he is based on everything I've seen from him, which is a lot. And reports are saying, bit of a micromanager, kind of looking over shoulders in a like that's the opposite of Dan Campbell. He is very, very trusting in his coordinators. That's why they become such great coordinators because they have that leeway to do their jobs. And that's why the Lions coaching system has just been a NFL portal for the past couple of years with the amount of guys, not just offensive and defensive coordinators we lost this year with Aaron Glenn going to the Jets, obviously, Ben Johnson to Chicago, but the receiver coaches have been poached, the running back coaches, like clearly Campbell knows how to build a staff and empower them. And I don't know if Ben Johnson has those same head coaching skills. I know he can coordinate an offense. I know he can. And maybe he will be an amazing head coach. It's obviously on the board. We've seen Kyle Shanahan do it. Matt LaFleur is another pretty good example, kind of that Ben Johnson cloth. Nothing real, you know, no real presence about him, but he's just so smart that all the players like we will back that guy because we know he'll put us in the right spots. That could happen. There is no doubt about that. But if I were to make a prediction right now, I think we're going to look back on Ben Johnson leaving Detroit as a time where someone tried to get happier than happy. And I am all for going for promotions. I'm all for testing yourself. I'm not I don't object the fact at all that he took the head coaching job. I think he should have. I think as a man, and I think he said this in his press conference actually. As a man, you want to test yourself and see what you can do in higher roles with more responsibility. Totally respect that. And love that he's testing himself. I just don't know if he's going to be able to ace this test because as much as I love Dan Campbell and I think the offense will be great, I think this is going to be a bit of a John Lennon, Paul McCartney kind of vibe where they're great apart from one another. John Lennon wrote Imagine, Paul McCartney joined Wings and made a couple bangers, but obviously Lennon McCartney are some of the greatest musical harmonies that have ever been written. Like they can't get back to that level. Ben Johnson, the schematic genius, and Dan Campbell, the best leader of men in football, like that's just a pairing that's going to be hard to replicate. And again, I don't blame Ben Johnson at all, but I wouldn't be surprised if 2, 3 years down the road, we're back to Lennon McCartney. Because unlike Lennon and McCartney, there's nothing personal between those two. They could come back together. I don't want to say anytime they want, but if the context is right and the circumstances, it's absolutely on the board. Those are just some of my concerns about Ben Johnson in Chicago. Please let me know, am I out to lunch? What do you guys think the Bears are going to do this season? How many wins, playoff wins, etc.? Drop it all in the comments below. I'm small enough as to where I can read all comments and love doing so. So drop something down there. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed what you heard. Please subscribe if you really enjoyed it. The Spit Sports Show just hit over 400 subscribers. Big things happening on this channel. And as always, I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out. Love you guys.